Hello and welcome to the Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. I'm your host, Dr. David Hardy. And today on our show, we've got another amazing guest. He is an intelligence officer, best-selling author, and a body language expert. Welcome to the show, Gavin Stone. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, this is intriguing to me. You've been security and intelligence operative for multiple agencies, government, private clients, freelance. How does the world work? Like, what is this world of spy like?
Very different to what you see on the movies most of the time.
I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. That there's always an element of danger, and there are always things that are going on which are very, kind of highly intense, and there is a lot of action when the action happens. But for the majority of the time, it's actually pretty boring. It's sitting around for hours waiting for people or watching people, observing and gathering information ready for when you need to use it later on. So it can be a case of sitting in a car for hours and hours and hours and then just waiting for somebody to leave so you know what time they left and you can make a note in a book. So,
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's not all fights and car chases. In fact, if you are getting into gunfights, car chases, and explosions, then you're doing your job very, very wrong, and something's gone really badly, badly operationally wrong somewhere.
Oh, no kidding. Now, I've also heard that, like, on this point of things being boring or tedious, monotonous, is that a good spy is very, like, unsuspecting. Like, he could be in a room and blend in with a wallpaper. That he's kind of the person you'd forget their name afterwards if you even kind of remembered the person. That would be a good spy.
Yeah.
Is in your experience that the case? Is that the case?
Yeah, you have to have a perfect balance here because what you need to be is memorable to the person that you're trying to kind of get involved in their life with, but not to anybody else in the room.
Uh,
So you need to stand out, but only to one person, and that's the target. So if your job is to get close to an ambassador or a high ranking military intelligence officer or something along those lines, you need to have something that will attract their attention, but nobody else in the room. And like you say, at the same time, you need to be not boring, but you need to be the kind of person that most people could walk past, very disarming, without thinking, I need to keep my eye on him. They don't need the last thing you want is somebody to look at you as a potential threat.
right. So basically, you should be suspicious of all the people that just kind of pass by you in life then, right? Like,
Well, in my job, yes.
so if you're an ambassador or something and you don't want to be infiltrated, then the people walking up to you and trying to talk to you are like not important, right?
Well, I mean, there's kind of techniques that we use in this industry without revealing too much. We have what we do is we establish what they call POL or patterns of life. And that could be anything from where you shop to clubs you're a member of, where you dine frequently, that kind of thing. Could be any number of things. And once we've established those patterns of life, we can then decide whether you're going to do what's called the bump. And that could be done one of two ways, where you go in off at the deep end and you do that introduction and you have a well thought out plan of conversation in your mind of how you're going to get it to go with the information that you've got. Or you do it a more gradual way, and it might be, for instance, where he walks his dog each morning at 7 o'clock at the local park. So what you do is you make sure you're walking your dog the opposite direction on the same park at the same time, and each morning you pass and you acknowledge, and that acknowledge eventually turns into a smile. That smile turns into hello. That hello becomes a conversation. That conversation becomes a friendship. And what you've done is you've built on the grounds of familiarity. You'd be surprised how many people just through familiarity alone feel secure. Advertisers and marketers and big companies across the world know this. This is why the likes of Coca-Cola continue to bombard with advertisements, and other companies all over the place. We know they exist. We know who they are. Even nobody's not buying toilet paper. But what's happening is
Right.
people are going for the brands that they recognize because of the constant bombardment and familiarity of those particular brands. So this is kind of the basis of where we're building our kind of foundation for this relationship from. And then in time, that relationship, like I say, turns into an accomplished mission if you've done it properly.
So, what are like some of these missions that you can talk about now that you've been on, or which agencies kind of sent you in to do something? Can you kind of give us some background here to put that in perspective? What a
Yeah.
mission would be?
Sure. So, I mean, again, I've got to be very careful with, because I'm still subject to the Official Secrets Act, and I've got to be very careful with what I can say.
Right.
I do remember when I first started, and I've worked for British and American governments. I've worked for the Ministry of Defence here in the UK, several private clients and different agencies. And I remember I did it. I got into the industry a different way to where most others do. Most others get a tap on the shoulder at college, where they've been to either Oxford or Cambridge or somewhere like that. They've got a great education, and they get called aside and say, look, the talent spotter in your college has, kind of prompted us to say you're a good potential candidate. And they get brought in and trained, from the ground up. And I did it the other way. I actually started off in kind of private investigations, and I did it all the wrong way around. I started in the private sector and ended up working for the government, which is very unusual. But I worked my way up through private investigations and smaller bread and butter jobs until I ended up getting certain government surveillance contracts through making the right contacts. And then again, just by using what I'd literally learned on the job, rubbed shoulders with the right people to say, oh, he works in intelligence, that's something I'd like to do, and built the rapport and the relationship, and then built onto it from there.
So you
Um,
had to infiltrate government to become a spy.
yeah, how cool is that? I used their own techniques and tactics to get a job from them. So yeah, and that was pretty much how it went. Like I say, I was, when it come to the actual intelligence gathering side of it, I was very, very green, and I was Hollywood educated. I only knew what I'd seen on the TV. And one of the not the first, but one of the first.
So you're saying it's not like the fiction books? Like there was one I read, the Unforgiven Spy. It's not like that.
Yeah, that's reasonably close if you're a contractor. Yeah, so probably one of the most accurate. But yeah, the whole scenario with me, because of the fact that I'd got this image in my head of what it was going to be like, being called into an ops room and being, given this PowerPoint of a mission and handed gadgets and that kind of thing. I thought, oh, this is going to be brilliant. And what happened was I was sat down in a room, and somebody said to me, my mission was, my assignment was one sentence, and that was find out how the Russians are getting railgun information out of Korea. And I was like, okay. And that was
That's
it.
it.
That was everything. No gadgets, no PowerPoint, no maps, no phone calls, no. And I was like, okay. And then what I got was, why are you still here? So yeah, that was very much a case of, okay, well, that's not much to go on. And I remember like kind of leaving and kind of scratching my head thinking, well, where do I start?
Yeah.
And what I did is I had to reverse engineer it. I thought, okay, so if I was going to get railgun information out of Korea, what would I do? How would I do it? And the starting point is obviously find yourself a railgun expert, which, surprisingly, there are very few. It's not like former McDonald's workers, where there's an abundance of them. There's not actually many of these guys around. And then I can narrow it down to, okay, what about the ones in Korea? So that brings the list down even shorter. So I've now got a very, very short list of people, and then I start looking at what they do and their history and things they've done, papers they've written or works they've had published. And I noticed that one particular gentleman had some work published that was co-authored with somebody with a Russian name. And I was like, not a believer in coincidences after working in this industry for so long. And I started making a few inquiries, and it turned out that that particular Russian had ties to the embassy. And with the right amount of inquiries, I managed to find out that that was where. And again, I'm not going to go too much into the methodology and exactly how it worked, but just by linking the two names, I was able to find out that that was where the information on the railgun was getting leaked to the Russians, and take that back to my employers. Sorry. So
Okay.
yeah, and
Now,
that was
did
it.
you
So
even have to travel to Russia or to Korea to find this
nope.
out? No.
Didn't even. Most of it
Wow.
was done from my living room. So yeah, I mean, it was. It's something that generally I describe intelligence, or the world of intelligence, as a little bit of a magic trick. It looks amazing from the outside, but when you pull the curtain back and show people how it's done, it's generally a little bit disappointing, and people go, "Oh, is that it?" So yeah, sorry everybody, I didn't jump Aston Martins or blow anything up and parachute into a mountain, but no, it was actually completely different. But it's still very important, very effective. And once you, for most people, if I were to ask the average person, find out how the Russians are getting intelligence out of this country, they wouldn't know where to start. So just knowing what to do alone, is a massive advantage.
Well, these are skills, and pretty big skills at that as well. And yeah, like one of them is just to be able to focus and to to sit down and follow through on some of these things. Kind of walk us through some of these skills from like, yeah, the basic. Okay, well, what do I do now? I'm kind of overwhelmed. To
Hmm.
okay, well, this is boring. How do I follow through? Like, and then the bits of excitement and joy you get throughout it. What is kind of that skill process and acquisition that you went through?
Well, I know with the training I had, one of the main factors within the lesson was always to simplify everything. And I remember the question I got asked was, "How do you get a giraffe in the fridge?" And the answer was, "You open the door and you put him inside." And that's it. Because if you start overthinking, you're overcomplicating a problem. You're going down a road that you don't need to. And then the question that followed that was, how do you get an elephant in the fridge? And the answer to that one was, you open the door and you take the giraffe out, and then you put the elephant in. And that was meant to teach you the ramifications of your actions. That everything you do, you need to kind of follow through and think what the results are going to be. But the whole kind of basis of the lesson was to not get hung up on all these massive details to start with. Is just simplify everything and then work out the finer details for each stage and step. Because if you get overwhelmed, if somebody turns around to you and says, right, we need to get to the moon, how are you going to do it? You say, well, I'm going to get a rocket and I'll fly. And you say,
Done.
okay, that's it, job done. Now, as for anything else, we can work on the details, but we now know how we're going to get there. That's where you have to start with every operation is a simple straight line, and then work out each step along the way how you're going to travel along that straight line. So when you start overcomplicating things, you create your own issues that aren't even always there.
What is the complication though in some of these? Because I would imagine sometimes you're just a spoke in the wheel. You're finding one piece of information to a bigger thing.
Yeah.
Is that the case as well, or
Yeah, I mean, so we get like our customers or policymakers, whichever you want to refer to them as, the people in government who the decision makers, they need to know certain amounts of information. And I've one of the pieces of advice I've given to a recruit recently, when he said to me, "Yeah, what can you tell me?" And I said, "You've got to be very, very careful with the information you get, especially if you burn a bridge getting that information." So, hypothetically, they may want to know the age and school of a particular country's leaders, children, and you burn everything you've got to get that information, and you come back and say he's got a 13-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter, and they go to St Trinian's. And and of course, you've got the information, you've achieved your objective, But then they might turn around and say, brilliant, now what we want you to do, we want you to go back and we want you to do X, Y, and Z to infiltrate their lives with this, and this so as we can get closer. And you're like, I can't go back because I told the school this and I told the caretaker that. And if you've used an alias or a cover already, that you then can't go back in person, you've shot yourself in the foot. So you do have to kind of, to a degree, preempt what's going to come next. So if you can
Right.
imagine, if you think to yourself, okay, why are they going to want to know that? And then it's going to be a case of, all right, maybe they're later going to want the son or daughter of this particular world leader to put something in the house or to take something from the house or whatever the case may be. And if that's the case, then I need to leave myself an open avenue to be able to get back to that person and not, burn myself in the process. So preempting what the next request will be is definitely going to be a big issue. And like you say, you might only have a little bit of information and not have the bigger picture, but you do need to be able to at least have an idea of what is going to come afterwards, from your initial task, as it were.
Fascinating. So you're finding kind of the structure and organization of chaos here.
Mm-hmm.
What other things kind of surprised you about how organizations, governments, and kind of society in general is run then?
Vastly how incompetent they are. There are a lot of conspiracy theories out there that there's this huge organization that watches everything that everybody does, and their only job is to kind of, keep you in a box and make themselves rich off you. And if that's happening, it's purely by accident more so than by design, because most of the time that they can't keep their eye on what's going on in their own departments. And I say this with a degree of jest, but at the same time, I've worked for different government departments around the world. I've worked for different agencies within the same government. And one thing they all have in common is this absolutely crazy opposite ends of the spectrum. Like over here, they're expecting you to save the world. And over here, you can't be sent out because you haven't done your health and safety certificate on working a keyboard in an office for more than 20 minutes and haven't got that tick in the box. And you're like, come on, really? So, and the bureaucracy side of it can be absolutely insane. And yes, I am exaggerating a little bit with each end of the spectrum, but you get the general idea of even somebody with vast amounts of experience.
Then why on earth did you choose this? Like, you were in the public sector.
Yeah, I know. So
why'd you go into this field of everything needs to be rubber stamped, including
it drove me absolutely
which
crazy
bathroom
when
stall
I
I
did.
use.
Yeah. And I ended up going into the private sector afterwards. And what I did when I left, when I was no longer working in the field, what I did was went back into the industry in order to train and teach other operatives. And this could be seasoned operatives who need their, tick in the box refresher course or whatever in how to operate a paperclip. Or it could be new recruits who are going out into the field for the first time, and they're like, how do I do this? How do I do an investigation? How do I gather intelligence? So and it could be anything from covert surveillance to close protection, where I'd be teaching them the fundamentals to start with of how to operate.
So much of this is like behind the scenes stuff, and yet you're one of the top global gurus for body language here. So how do you go from looking up research articles and names, getting your certificate in keyboarding, to becoming this world leader on body language and how to read people?
Well, during the course of many years of intelligence gathering, one of the most important things you can do is the human intelligence gathering part itself. And this generally requires you to meet with your asset or your covert informant, or whatever. Different agencies have different names and labels for them, but I generally refer to them as an asset. And when you're meeting with your asset, there is usually a few things that are done in order. One of the first things to do, because you never know how much time you may or may not have, or whether you're going to get interrupted, or any other number of things that could go wrong, is to always set up the next meeting first. So as long as that's out the way, if everything else gets cut short, at least you know when and where the next meeting's going to be. And then the second thing to do is to establish whether anybody else has approached them. And this could be friendly or hostile intelligence agencies. And you need to know, has anybody else asked you to get intelligence or information or secrets for them? And what that means is when I'm kind of asking that question, the question comes out automatically, but I'm looking for responses from the person. And because of the fact that I will ask them certain questions first, I'll say, "How has your day been?" And they'll say, "Yeah, it's been great." I'll say, how is your travel here?" They go, "Yeah, it was fine." And then if I turn around and say, "Has anybody else asked you to get secrets?" And they go, "Well, what would make you say that?" Then all of a sudden, we've got a very different reaction and a different answer.
Right.
And I'm going to be looking at their body language. I'm going to be looking at their speech and speech rate, their blink rate, where their breath location is. I'm going to be looking at the not just the body language, but the statement itself. I'm qualified in statement analysis by the creator of statement analysis, and that is listening to the words that are said. So in that instance, or a better one, you can say to somebody, "Have you had my wallet?" And if they turn around and say, "I don't even know where you keep your wallet," they haven't said no. They haven't given a denial. They haven't lied to you because they haven't actually answered your question. And that's when you need to start being more aware of the statement itself and what they are actually saying and what's hidden in the message. What people say and what people take in are two different things. So the most important thing to do is listen to start with for the word no. And if you don't get a no, then that should be the first little red flag, and then find out what's coming from there. And it doesn't matter if somebody says no first, they say, "No, I haven't had your wallet, I don't even know where you keep it," then it's not as bad. But if they just start with, "I don't even know where you keep your wallet," that's not a denial. It's a pacifying answer. And that's when, like I said, the little red flags should be going up, and you go, "Okay, I need to, ask a few more questions to find out here if there's something more going on."
So how do you kind of stop yourself from maybe getting like a false positive or a false lie?
Yeah. So,
Because sometimes we're so ingrained that, well, everybody lies.
yeah, and
And
that has happened and does happen. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, it's something that in this, and this is where you have to try your best to be as objective as you can be, because of the fact that you will get what you look for.
right.
If you look for deception, you will find it. So, but what the most important thing is to start with is to look for clusters. Not for There's no such thing as the Pinocchio effect, as it's been
Right.
come to be known as. So, if you get somebody who says, "Oh, if a person rubs their chin while they're talking, it means that they're lying." No, there
Right.
cannot
And
be one
shooting their eyes
singular.
up to the left doesn't mean it
Yeah,
either.
no, no. I mean,
No.
it's an indication, but what we're looking for clusters. So, for example, when somebody's stressed, their blink rate increases. Like that will be going like that.
Absolutely. Pupil
Yeah,
sizes changes, color in the
exactly.
face, sweating,
Yeah.
all
So
the
if you
all the
if you look
autonomic stuff.
for several things that when you're getting your answer, if somebody doesn't normally fold their arms and all of a sudden they fold their arms, then they look up and left, then their blink rate increases, then their breath goes from tummy to chest, and you get a cluster of it. And in my experience, it's been three or more. It has to be three or more to show that there is an increased stress rate. Now that doesn't mean deception, but
It
it
means
does
they're
mean increased
stressed.
stress. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you do then is you start looking to, well, why is this person stressed at that question? If they haven't had my wallet, they shouldn't be stressed by it, or well, whatever the case may be. So because there's this fallacy that you can read body language, or even a lie detector, as they're known, which the polygraph machine isn't a lie detector. It in itself is a stress detector.
Absolutely.
Lies
Yeah.
cannot be detected, but stress levels can. And that's when you can say, okay, this person is getting abnormally stressed over this question in comparison to other similar questions. But this particular one, there was obviously something in it that increased the stress levels, when you start asking yourself why and investigating further.
Huh. Now, behind the scene researchers and all kind of these intellectual types, I've noticed there's a high level of anxiety prone people out there. So when you're just dealing with stress and subtle questions, how do you really tease that out in somebody who's anxiety and stress prone?
Well, the most important thing is to make them feel comfortable
There
as they
you
can be,
go.
because you need to be able to have that baseline. Because there is no way you can look for abnormalities in a baseline if you haven't established where that baseline is. So, in order for you to know when they feel comfortable, you have to make them feel comfortable. And as soon as you've made them feel comfortable, you've got them to relax, you've established a baseline, and you've established what's normal behavior for them. Then, as soon as something happens that isn't normal behavior for them, that's when it's easier to
That's when
spot,
you
which,
know.
yeah,
And this
and
is
that
over a
obviously increases.
long time period, correct?
It
Most
can be,
commonly.
yeah.
Yeah,
It all depends on the person. You can have somebody who comes straight into an interview room, sits down, and they're pretty much comfortable straight away, open posture, and and you can start talking to them. Sometimes it could be false confidence. They could actually have committed something, a crime or whatever the case may be, and they think, well, they've got nothing, and then next thing you know, the stress signals start coming out because they think, oh, hang on, they might know more than I think they do, or whatever the case may be. On other occasions, somebody comes in comfortable because of the fact that they genuinely don't have anything to hide.
right.
So it's just a case of using the powers and the skills of perception and the other techniques that we're taught to be able to then narrow down and drill down on getting to the answer that we want.
Wow. Now, how does this run into personality types? So you must have like some patterns out there, and we'll just go into personalities versus information we want to gather.
Yeah,
What have you noticed with humanity?
well, the first and most important thing is that everybody is suffering one way or another in their own level,
Right.
and everybody in different ways. So, and even like the kind of the first world third generation rich kid who's got everything is still suffering, just not in the same way as the poor child in Africa that's mining for cobalt for whatever company in China. But everybody has their own level of dealing with life, and that helps shape their personality. Primarily, there are two categories that shape somebody's personalities, and that is their outlook as to whether they believe everything in the world is happening to them and they have to react to it, or they are happening to the world and the world is reacting to them. So it's kind
Yeah.
of it's the one. Or to simplify it, you get some people that blame the world that their life is bad, and you get other people that don't blame the world and they say, no, I'm the designer of my own destiny. If something goes wrong, it's a problem, but I'm going to press on, and that they're in control, as it were. So that kind of hopefully clarifies it a little bit of the ones that everything else is everything that happens to them is somebody else's fault, or the ones that say everything that happens to me is down to me, I'm in control of it, and they're the ones that shape the main two primary areas of personality. And then
So on that point, that's
mhm.
kind of like one of those business mindset things out there, is that all these gurus want to kind of train people to be the driver of the ship. Doesn't matter
Mhm.
what happens to you, you've got to go forward type mentality. So
Yeah,
now when you're teaching things, is that something that you kind of prescribe to as well then, or is it somewhere in the middle?
no, definitely. I try to push people as much as I possibly can, and one of the things I say to people when I'm teaching is, if you can, take the blame. Look at absolutely if something goes wrong, say to yourself, what could I have done to have made that different? Instead of turning around saying, oh, this is all Bob's fault. If it wasn't for him, then we'd have all been. That's living in a would be if I could be world. And you don't want to be there. You want to be in a world where you say, okay, I've learned a lesson here. Something went wrong. what could have been done differently so that it doesn't happen again. How am I going to make? How am I going to have another go at this? Only this time, not make that mistake. And it just comes down to kind of persistence and resilience it's time to get the job done. I'm sure you've heard the saying. There are people who look at mistakes as being a problem, and then there are other people who look at mistakes as a learning curve and learn from them, and then succeed because of the fact that they didn't give up with one mistake.
Now, there's obviously got to be a transition then. So if you can push somebody one direction, they could probably be pushed back and forth to and from. And I bring this up because, yeah, you do teach and you do give out information and courses and share your wisdom with people here. And one of them is in anti-bullying. So kind of walk us through how all these skills you've developed in this intelligence arena now can be translated into helping somebody who feels bullied or picked on.
Yeah, I like to this class that I deliver now and again is primarily based at school kids that are and the majority of bullying is verbal, not physical, but that
Right.
also has the biggest effect. Which might sound crazy, but most kids can take a punch and a day or two later it's gone and forgotten about. But it's the constant bombardment of negativity that is the hardest thing. So I teach the kind of take the power method. And what I do is and I'll have the children are always generally accompanied by their parents or an adult, and I will ask permission first for the children to be able to use any kind of language or profanity that they want. On this occasion, they get a hall pass, and I'll turn around and say, come on, insult me. And do your best, like really, really give it some. And you'll get one or two kids who'll start off and they'll say something to you like custard head, and I'll say, no, not none of the really, really try
Really
and hurt
bad.
me. And then all of a sudden it's like somebody's hit the gas pedal, because then all of a sudden they'll start throwing some stuff out there, and you go, wow, that's pretty sharp. I haven't heard that before, and you can understand why some of these kids get upset. But what I'll do, instead of getting hurt by it, I'll be laughing at it. So you get one of these kids will turn around and say, "Oh yeah, your mother's a prostitute," and I'll turn around and say, "Well, she's got to feed my dad's drug habits somehow or other," and of course. I will turn the whole thing into a laugh and a joke, and I'll say, "Do you understand?" And what will happen is they'll come up with all sorts of insults, and we'll have a good old laugh and a joke about it as they're doing it. And then at the end of it all, I'll say, "How much of that hurt me?" And they'll be like, "Well, none of it hurt you. We had that much fun laughing at you and your responses. You just bounced it all off." I said, "Yeah, exactly. None of it hurt me." I said, "Because I didn't let it. I took the power from you by turning what you said into something way more crazy, out there, and ridiculous, and just you served it, and I whacked it straight back at you, with a double helping on top." And as soon as that kind of mindset shift realizes that it's only what they let in that hurts. It's subjective to them if they let it be. All of a sudden, changes the tone of the entire lesson, and that's the foundation of it. And I teach them methods and techniques and whatever else. And what generally happens, most bullies at that level in school are bullying because of the reaction. They want to look powerful or intelligent or strong or whatever the case may be. They've got their own individual reasons for doing it, but the bottom line is it comes down to power. And if you take that power away from them, you're no longer a good subject. You're no longer a good target. And that's when they go, okay, I'm wasting my time with this guy. He's not running off crying anymore. And, it changes, and maybe they move on to somebody else. Maybe they change tactics, whatever the case may be. But the bottom line is it moves it away from you, and it takes the problem away with it, and sometimes ends up even resulting in friendships. But that's that's very rare, but it does happen. So, but that's
Absolutely.
the
Now on
general
that
gist of it.
point, a big part of your job and career has been in observation. So I always say there's a reason why your eyes are on the front of your face and the ears are on the side. And yeah, your eyes, they're less likely to be deceived. So observation's important, but what have you noticed in the body language too, or the appearance, or what's going on with kind of the kids who are bullied? Um, what have you noticed?
That's a good question. I like your question there, because of the fact that I still see this even in adults. And
Right, you would.
I mean, when my wife and I've been to all different parts of the world, all over the place. You know, some areas good and some areas bad and whatever else. And even in some of the nicer areas, you can wander out of town, and it doesn't take too long before you can find yourself in a particularly shady area. You know, you one wrong turn, and you start to think, oh, hang on, maybe I should speed up and get out of here a little bit faster. And if you're on foot, and I have had this. I've been with my wife, and we've been walking, through certain parts of cities in certain parts of the world. And we walked on this one occasion down this one particular street, and all of a sudden we were in a more of a nasty area. And I felt her tense up. We were holding hands, and her grip on my fingers, and I was like, kind of, whoa, let the blood flow. And she tried to speed her walk up, and she was looking down, and she was, chin guarding her, all the usual things. Her arms moved tighter into the body, and I said, whoa, and I actually stopped walking. I said, listen to me. I said, it's really, really important. I said, I'm telling you right now, you need to stop walking like a victim. I said,
Uh,
because if you don't, we're not going to make it out of here. I said, from now on, I said, in a minute, I said, I'm going to release your hand. I said, and we're going to give each other a hug. I said, and then we're going to hold hands again. And you're going to walk like you own this city, right? I said, I want you to walk through here like you are Wonder Woman, and that if anybody comes near you, you don't have the slightest problem because you can kick their ass. I said, and I said, from now on, you're bulletproof. I said, you understand? And we had the conversation. I gave her a hug and I held her hand. And when we carried on walking, I said, that's better. That's better.
there you have it.
And that was it. And we were fine. We were fine with that because of the fact that, my shoulders were relaxed and whatever else. And there is a difference between kind of fighting and being able to fight. And most people, they can generally tell that you're able to if you're relaxed. And they can tell that you're not able to if you're tense and concerned and stressing over the fact that, you're in an area that's unfamiliar. People are so attuned to it, it's untrue, especially people who've grown up within that kind of environment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they would need to be. Now, you have plans to put together kind of more um, lectures, seminars, high ticket events. So that was a gem there for people. What's kind of the details? How do they find out about this, and what sort of things do you want to teach people in the future about that they would want to reach out to you about?
Sure. So yeah, we've got this high ticket event coming up this year. We are putting the content together, and what I've done is I've reached out to friends within the intelligence community, and we've got the best of the best from CIA, MI6, Mossad, KGB, all the best intelligence agencies around the world, and we've taken the psychological training that intelligence officers have, and we've condensed it into what's going to be useful for civilians to help them in their everyday life in a way that's going to give them a massive advantage over everybody else. And we've put this content together. We are now working on getting it out there to market. They're literally just going to have the kind of strategic method of thinking that intelligence officers have, and that's going to be applicable to every area of their life. This is whether they're trying to find a partner, a new job, buy a house, get a car, whatever they want to do, whatever they want to achieve in life, they'll be able to use these particular techniques that we get taught in order to obtain it. And not only obtain it, but do it, in the best possible way.
Wow, sign me up. Yeah.
You're not the
Absolutely.
first to have said
Wow.
that.
So, how they get information about this? Obviously, they can get your books on Amazon, but how do they find out?
At the moment, we don't have a website up, but we are working on putting something in place. In the meantime, I'm on all the social media websites, yeah, Twitter, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So please feel free to kind of connect with me on there, and literally watch this space. It will be coming out soon. So if you see either on my YouTube channel or on any of the social media sites, there will be a link going up, and people will be able to follow that, and I will be bombarding everybody with announcements when it's when we've finally got the first pages up at the very least.
Fantastic. Excellent. All right. So stay tuned and definitely reach out to Gavin Stone, all the social media sites, find his books, and wait for the announcement to his big event. And definitely stay tuned to the next episode of The Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. Take care.